guest that's been with us before, and she is a dear friend of mine. She is also a CPA. She's also doing all of our books, so my law business, my personal, my real estate, and not only is she just a good friend, but she's an amazing CPA. Elmedina, Tasic, I mean, how much of an introduction do you really need, right?
I'll keep on talking, Nedim.
Everybody
I'm enjoying this. Am I blushing?
But I figured it would be a good time to have you back on the show because today is kind of the day that PPP Round 2 is becoming official where people can apply for it. And who better to talk about it than, a CPA and who's been handling this stuff early on and knows kind of most that needs to be known about PPP, even though I don't think we'll ever know everything as much, law as goes into that stuff. But I think you've kind of digested all the most important points that our small business owners need to know. And so having introduced you the way I've introduced you, let's go back to PPP 1 because now a lot of people are also applying for forgiveness. Mm-hmm. What can you tell us about that?
Okay. So as far as forgiveness goes, there's no rush for it. So basically they have 10 months from the time their covered period ends. The government, they don't have to make any payments. So basically they don't have to make any payments for 10 months from the end of their covered period, which most people are taking the 24-week period. Mm-hmm. And then they can apply for forgiveness anytime within that time. So I think banks were rushing that and telling people you need to apply for PPP 1 forgiveness in order to get PPP 2. And that's not the case at all. They just need to certify that they've used all the funds or will use all of the PPP 1 funds before they get PPP 2. But as far as forgiveness for PPP 1, there are 3 forms available right now, and we expect a 4th form to become available. The first form that's available is the 3508S, and that's the under 50,000 simplified. It's a very simple form. So if anyone got a PPP loan under 50,000, they can use that form to file forgiveness. And I mean, it just asks for some basic information. They don't have to do any full-time employee computations or anything. The next form is the 3508EZ. So that's an EZ form. Now there is some criteria in order to qualify for that form to use it. Like they can't have reduced the employee wages greater than 25%. And let me see what the other one. Yeah, annual salary or hourly wages by an employee by greater than 25%. And so also if they're self-employed, independent contractors, or sole proprietor, they can use that form. So if their loan was greater than 50,000 and they don't qualify for the S, they can use that form. If they don't qualify for either one of those forms, then the 3rd form that's available is the full 3508. For that one, that form requires a lot of information, a lot of calculations. I would definitely advise them to use a professional if they're using that form. And the 4th form that we expect to come out is for loans under 150,000. So with the most recent law that passed in December, they promised that there will be simplified forgiveness for loans under 150,000. Well, there isn't a form for that right now. We're waiting for SBA to release that form. And at this time, we have no idea what it looks like or what it's going to ask.
Okay. So basically, your forgiveness is going to depend how much money you have gotten and, what the structure of your business is at the end of the day.
Kind of. How much money, what the structure of business, and if you kept the same full-time employees or if you lost a lot of employees or if you reduce their wages. So there's some criteria that goes into that varies on what form you're going to use based on that.
Have you seen, and I'm going to start with us, ours has already been forgiven. We've been informed by our bank that ours has been forgiven. We've done everything that we are supposed to do. And I know you talked to Almira about a certain aspect of it that they weren't 100% sure about. And so they initially told us we'd have to pay that back, but now they turned around and they said, nope, we're going to forgive that aspect of it as well. So what was that all about?
It was the Eidl Grant. So if you remember, last year you were able to apply for Eidl loan or Eidl grant, and you didn't have to take the loan in order to get the grant. So people that received that grant, it was up to $10,000. Originally, they said if you receive that grant, then because that grant is forgivable, they're going to reduce your PPP forgiveness amount by the amount of grant received. So anyone that applied for forgiveness last year, that's what they did. If they got the Eidl grant, so let's say the grant was the full $10,000 and their PPP loan was $100,000. Well, they received forgiveness of $90,000 for their PPP loan. Now, what's happening is the SBA is actually going to issue a refund for the difference. So because the law changed in December, the new law says you can get the Eidl grant and full forgiveness of the PPP loan. So SBA is going to be issuing refunds for the amount of the deduction that they took from the PPP.
Okay, that's great. And what have you seen when it comes to businesses applying for the forgiveness? Have you seen any issues basically, or has everything been kind of going according to plan?
It seems like everything was going well. There's a little bit of uncertainty and people are not talking about it. It's not out there yet, but there's something called an employee retention credit. And we're following that very closely. We're waiting for IRS guidance to come out on that. That's another thing that changed with the most recent tax law. Originally, they said if you receive the PPP funds, you're not eligible for this employee retention credit. And the employee retention credit goes through payroll. So on those quarterly payroll forms, that's where the employer would have received that employee retention credit. Well, in December, on December 27th, they said, well, let's go back. Now you're eligible for both. Even if you receive PPP funds, you can get the employee retention credit. So now, but you can't double dip. You can't use the same wages for both. And so the only issue we're seeing with that right now is people that applied early because they extended the period to 24 weeks. Most people did not go in and fill in their rent. They didn't fill in their utilities. They just said, I have enough wages to cover my PPP loan. So they just put the full amount of wages during that 24 period. Well, we don't know what the IRS is going to say. We hope they're not going to punish people for applying early, but you can't use the same wages for both. So there's a potential that they missed out on part of the employee retention credit if they were eligible for it because they used wages only for the PPP forgiveness.
And because there is, and it appears to me that because there is so much still unknown about those things, you guys would probably prefer for businesses like, hey, sit back and relax, don't do it just yet.
Yes.
Wait.
Yep. Yeah, just wait. So our AI CPA was advising us to wait, to hold off, because they expected changes to come. We just didn't know what the changes were going to be. But they were following the developments in Congress and, what they were proposing. So we knew there were changes coming. We just didn't know the exact changes. So they kept telling us, wait on applying for forgiveness. But then our clients really wanted to apply for forgiveness because they wanted to know that they have been forgiven, that they don't have to worry about this. So we were kind of stuck in the middle saying, no, don't apply for forgiveness yet.
No, we were in the same boat. We just wanted to get it off our minds because you're like, hey, I'm sitting on this, like, what's going to happen to it? And that's going to be like, as soon as it over, we're like, okay, let's get it done. But you guys are saying, don't worry about it just yet. Sit on it for a little while until we've got more clear guidance, I guess, on how to do it. It kind of makes sense. Having talked about round one, round two was recently passed. And let's start with the big picture. Tell us a little bit about that big picture that was recently passed.
Okay, so round one is not completely done yet. If someone did not get round one funds, so if they didn't apply, they can apply for round one now. So round one is back. But if businesses receive round one and they need additional funding, they can apply for round two right now as well. So as far as round two, it's a little bit more restrictive than round one. The computation is done the same, so it's based on payroll, and you have a choice of using 2019 or 2020 payroll. What I've seen from our clients is it seems like across the board, their 2019 payroll was higher than their 2020 payroll. So they're using 2019 payroll in order to get the PPP. It's the same amount. I mean, there's a limit of 2 million, but it doesn't apply to any of the businesses we work with. So they're pretty much getting the same amount as they did for PPP 1. The only difference between PP 1 and PP 2 as far as eligibility is that for PPP 2, they have to have had a decline in gross receipts of 25% or more in any one quarter of 2020 compared to the same quarter of 2019, or for the whole year of 2020 compared to 2019. So basically, a lot of the businesses we saw is that the second quarter of 2020, they had a reduction of 25% or greater compared to the same quarter of 2019. So it's usually the second quarter where we see it. And it doesn't matter if like the third or fourth quarter, they had an awesome quarter and they actually made more money than they did in 2020. The only eligibility criteria is that they actually had a 25% or greater loss, decline in revenues compared to the same quarter of 2019.
So I've got a feeling that most businesses is going to be that second quarter that was mostly affected.
It's mostly second quarter. And then we're getting a lot of questions on what gross receipts are. So it's pretty much all income you're reporting. So it's income from your customers. If you have interest income, that counts in there too. So you're taking all of your gross receipts, comparing it to the 2019 quarter. There's an exception for restaurants. They shouldn't be counting sales tax in their gross receipts. So restaurants, they collect sales tax and then they pay that sales tax to the Missouri Department. They don't have to count the sales tax as part of their gross receipts. But then restaurants, I mean, from what I've seen, they've had drops of like 70, 80% in revenue. So, yeah.
Yeah. And I talked to another friend of mine, another business owner of mine, and we were talking about that second quarter. And that's kind of what it boiled down to, the question that we had, like, when do you count gross receipts? Like, does it count when I received a check? So in May and I just didn't deposit it until, September or October. So it's like, how do you compute those gross receipts? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, well, what they're saying, so it says that you should be computing gross receipts based on how you keep your books. So I'm sure when you receive that check, you marked the deposit in your books, you received that income. So you marked it as income. So when you look at your profit and loss on the books, it's showing that you received that income, but it's probably sitting in undeposited funds. As far as proof of the loss of income, if the loan is under $150,000, the business doesn't have to produce that proof right now. They can produce that proof at the time of forgiveness, so when they request forgiveness for PPP2. Or if it's greater than $150,000, then they need to produce that proof right now. And proof can be bank statements. It could be internal QuickBooks reports, or it can be tax returns.
And folks, this is a great example of why all business owners should have a CPA. And I'll give you a quick example. So Elmedina here, she being our CPA, she's got access to our QuickBooks. So she, plays with it whenever she wants to play with it. And she can go in there and push a couple of buttons and give you those answers and tell you guys, hey, listen, look, you had a 25% decline in revenue, in your second quarter, and therefore you qualify for round 2 of PPP, and here are the documents that you need to apply for it, making the process streamlined. And so I would definitely it just takes a little while for most business owners to realize how much value a CPA actually brings to the table when it comes to these books. So anybody listening to this, looking for a CPA, a great CPA, give Elmedina a call. She'll definitely make your life so much easier.
Thanks, Ned. That's my ultimate goal. It really is. Because you shouldn't have to worry about those things. You shouldn't have to keep up with the most current legislature. Does it impact me? Does it not impact me? Because, if I see something that changed, I try to email my clients. We try to send out an email blast. Okay, these are the changes, so they can see if there's impact when it comes to them, and they can call us and say, how does this affect my tax situation? and we'll go over it with them versus, researching it on their own and trying to read different websites and different blog posts on what the most recent changes are.
And let me ask you this, because I get a lot of these phone calls from outside of Missouri.
Mhm.
Do you guys work with companies outside of Missouri? Are you guys able to help companies like nationwide?
Yeah, so we have a lot of clients that are outside of Missouri, and we file in multiple states. So I specifically work on clients that operate in multiple states, and we have to file tax returns in various states. I also work on clients where their home office is not even in Missouri. Their home office is in a completely different state, but they have a branch office or something in Missouri. There's really no restriction. I think lawyers, you have to get some kind of approval in each state you work in, whereas we don't.
Yeah, when I think about it, I mean, federal taxes are federal taxes. It doesn't matter if
Mhm.
you're in Missouri or if you're in, New
Yep.
York. At the end of the day, that the one small difference that's going to be for you guys is going to be that New York versus Missouri state tax that kicks in. But
Yes. Yeah, in each state they have their own list tax laws. Some of them conform to federal and will follow federal, like Missouri does in most cases. But some states will have their own exceptions, like New York, California, and some other states. There are certain things that they don't follow federal law, so we have to do federal state tax differences, which is fine. I mean, we do it for other clients, and it's not a problem.
cool.
We just keep stay on top of it and check where they follow federal law and where they don't, where they're different from federal law. A lot of times it's depreciation.
That makes perfect sense. And I know prior to us starting, so what is like your firm's, well, let me back up because I don't want to talk about that just yet. But when it comes to these PPP2 applications, do you think people should start working on them ASAP, or should they like wait a few more weeks to see how everything develops? Because I know initially with PPP round one, a lot of people were concerned that the money is going to run out. Obviously, it hasn't, it appears.
Mhm.
But is that something to be concerned about with round two?
Well, a lot of the clients we're working with, they need the money as soon as possible. So we're definitely trying to get those applications to them as soon as possible so they can apply. I have no idea if it's going to run out or when. I think the deadline to apply is sometime in March. But there's definitely a lot of money set aside for very small businesses. But if they need the money, I would say apply now. I don't expect many changes to come for PPP2 like it did for PPP1 because it was developing. So PPP2, they're following pretty much the same thing as PPP1, except that they have added that additional criteria, eligibility criteria.
Cool.
Yeah.
That
So
makes
I
perfect.
would say apply as soon as your bank opens, apply.
Yeah, I know we're working on it as we speak because I think we just got the application through Great Southern and we're working on on
And I
support.
forgot to mention, restaurants are also eligible for more money this time around. So you remember when you fill out the PPP application, you're supposed to multiply your monthly average payroll by 2.5.
Mhm.
Restaurants can apply by 3.5. So that's a little bit more money in their pocket, which is really good because they've been struggling a lot.
And I agree with that. I think industries like restaurants, hospitality industries, they've really been struggling because of
Yes.
this, and they were forced to shut down. So,
Yep.
giving them a little bit more help is definitely the right way to do it.
Yeah.
Um,
And I would also double check the numbers on the first PPP application when they're applying for the second one, even if they're using 2019 payroll. I saw it where a client applied on their own. And because there's so many changes around PPP1 when it just came out, there was a lot of unknown. Do I put contractors on here? Do I not put contractors? Are tips part of this? Are they not part of this? And it's I mean, there's nothing to go back and fix PPP1, but they missed out on a lot of money. The computation was incorrect. And so when we did it for them this time around, we figured out that there were errors on the first one. So now the second time around, they're actually eligible for more money.
cool beans.
So it pays off to work with a professional.
No, it definitely, and then first time we did this one, I told people how you and your firm have actually saved my partner and I a lot of money when it comes to doing these taxes, because we were in the process of doing it one way, and then you guys sit down with us and you guys said, okay, no, that's not the way you want to do it. If you want to save some money on taxes, and I'm talking like 5 figures, both each my partner and I, that you guys saved through a 30 minutes, phone consultation that we had at that time. So thank you for that, and that's why I always recommend you guys to everybody that needs some, tax CPA services. You guys are doing an amazing job. But I wasn't sure that you guys can actually work with, firms nationwide, basically.
Yeah,
Whoever got some questions, and so what is the best way to reach you, Elmedina? I know you're now getting into the tax season, so you're going to be swamped, right?
Yeah, it's going to be really busy, especially with IRS pushing the so tax returns. We can submit them starting on February 12th, I believe. So that's going to give us a smaller window of tax preparation. But as far as reaching me, I mean, I'm on LinkedIn, so LinkedIn is always a great way. They can call my office number 314-995-6900. If they go out to our website, which is mn-cpa.com. And if they go to my profile, there's an option on there to schedule a 30-minute meeting with me. So they can basically click on that link to schedule a meeting, and they can choose a time that works for them. So my calendar pops up and schedule a 30-minute consultation meeting. So we try to make it as easy as possible for our clients to reach us and potential clients.
And 30 minutes is a free consultation, right?
Yes.
So yeah. Listen to that, guys. You get 30 minutes of a CPA's time that, whether you hire them or not, you're going to get some great and valuable advice, which, as I said, through a 30-minute, conversation with them, they were able to save us a lot of money on taxes. So give them a call. Reach out to Elmedina. She's great. She knows what she's doing. She's been doing this for a long time. And now that I know that she can do this stuff nationwide, I mean, come on. There's a lot of, free information to gather from her. Elmedina, anything that I may have missed asking you that you think our viewers should know about?
No, I think we covered it. I mean, I would just advise them to work with their bankers. I've heard that some banks, I'm not saying that it's any of the local banks, but I've heard that some banks are saying they have to have forgiveness for PPP 1 in order to apply for PPP 2. That is not the case. That is not an SBA requirement. So if your bank is requiring that, you can look elsewhere if you haven't applied for forgiveness yet.
Makes sense. Well, makes perfect sense. And I want to thank you very much for taking a few minutes out of your day to talk to us about the PPP Round 2 and Round 1. And again, anybody that needs some tax help, talk to Elmedina. I do want to be respectful of your time, Elmedina. So again, thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful rest of the day, and I'll be talking to you soon, okay?
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.